Hi everybody, it's the Gin and Tonic Show. Once again, it's the 22nd of February 2015. So, the structure that we're going to do today, and tell us if you like it. If you want to change something, go ahead and tell us. What we thought we were going to do is we're going to stay with the definition so that we know what we're talking about, because I think it's very important to understand what it is that we are saying instead of just talking off and out into the blue. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to introduce a video of the week where we can just make a couple of comments. Then we're going to address a misconception that one of us has noticed during the week or something like that. And then what has happened in the news? What are we doing here? What has happened in Islam? I mean, I'm not going to comment on the fire in Dubai. I mean, it's stupid. We're not a news channel, but something that has to do with Islam, the spiritual side of Islam, right? Not anything that has happened in the Islamic world. Now, what I'm trying to avoid is Daesh and all the violence, even though it's getting, I mean, it's almost impossible to talk about anything else because it's there. But anyway, this is what we're going to try and do. This is what we're trying to adhere to. And then what we're going to have is we're going to have a topic of the week, which is going to be Arash is going to be talking about imperialism. And because this is such a lengthy and such a huge topic, he's going to split it into two parts. So if anybody wants to join in today, we're going to cover the basics today and then carry on next week and then address any concerns or any comments that you have or questions that you've asked today. Yeah, and what we're trying to do is we're not trying to cannibalize other shows. So we're always trying to keep some space to, for example, the Magic Sandwich Show and to Atheist Experience, because we would be too much of a competition for them, you see. So we're trying to take it easy.
I mean,
okay, so
we're not condemning cannibalism for all you cannibals out there. This isn't. Don't email me about all this. You can do whatever you want.
We're talking about Islam now. The thing with Islam is it's a religion as well as a socio-political, as well as a socio-economic system. It's an ideology. It's mainly a political ideology, and it's a worldview.
Way of life.
It's a way of life and religion, and where the religion determines the other elements. In other words, where the political ideology is being implemented in several regions on this planet, and apostates are seen as political traitors. Based on the interpretation of
can we just accept that it's a very strict way of life? You know, people say Buddhism isn't a religion; it's a way of life. I think Islam is a very good example of a dogma way of life, because they are telling you how to live every aspect of going to the bathroom, you know, washing.
Yeah, but the thing is, the goal of Islam is the implementation of Sharia. In other words, the goal of Islam is to replace democracy with Sharia. And this is what makes it political. This is why we have all these people trying to establish caliphates, where the people are trying to run the country, a nation, an entire region, according to the rules and laws of a god.
Which is actually, I'm sorry to get in here because this is kind of related to the subject. I learned a lot reading some of these new books that I've been looking at about the time. Just because we all have our biases about how Islam and, you know, the Ummah and the goal of trying to spread the caliphate, and only goal is to try to spread Sharia everywhere. But you'd be surprised about the actual things that went on during these times and how quote-unquote Islamic these Islamic empires were in the beginning.
Yeah.
So this is very interesting and connected to what we were going to talk about later. I'm sorry, continue.
And so this is what the show is about, right? We try and explain Islam and its contents, all the various aspects of it. Because now the next thing that we have is a video of the week. And I hope that next week it will be Arash who's going to contribute. I found one this week, which I mean, this is incredible, all right? It was actually Rationalizer who showed me this, and there were a couple of others who said, "Have you seen this?" Kevin is. There's a guy called. Most of you will know him, like Ali or Kevin or whatever, but most know him as Dawah Films, all right? And I have bumped into him from time to time when he made like a really particularly bad video, and I've mocked him a couple of times. Once even made a refutation video showing how superficial and shallow his thinking is. But now he came up with And believe it or not, I mean, he claims he's got like I think a double bachelor and a master, and he's now going for a PhD. But this is all in religion, okay? So all you have to do is say Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, and you got your PhD. And anyway, so he came up with a 2-day course. Now, what is baffling, and this is why I talked about this so long in the beginning, because I think Muslims are really getting shit scared of atheists, because they know that with a Christian, he already has this propensity for gods and towards, you know, this gullibility.
Yeah.
And with an atheist, none of their arguments are actually, you know, making any kind of impact.
Yes,
And
yes.
this is the problem. So he has come up, and I remember 3 years ago, it was all about Christians, Christians. And now it has changed. And I was always wondering, how come they don't understand that it's actually the atheists who are the biggest skeptics and the bigger threat to Islam? Because Muslims leaving usually become atheists because they realize, listen, if this God doesn't exist, if this God is such a bully and so inconsistent and so weak, why should there be any other gods who are equally weak, equally stupid? That, you know, because there's no big difference between the Christian God and the Islamic God. So they become atheists, and now they're really threatened about atheists. And he came up, this Dawah film came up with a 2-day course. Saying, oh, he calls him to Asadullah Ali, and so anyway, only about atheists and what an atheist is. But he doesn't understand what an atheist is. It's so weird.
I love that you brought this up because I've been noticing this very much in the political realm of Islam, where, you know, I listen to a lot of sermons take place in sometimes Europe, but mostly in the Middle East, just because I deal with the politics and, you know, like what's going on in Syria. You try to see which cleric supports which group. You know, you listen to the sermons. Sometimes it's funny, most of the time, actually, how radical they are. And I've noticed that in the beginning of the Syrian revolution, so 2011, the Syrian rebellion or whatever, every time they would come up, it was the Jews, the Christians, and the Crusaders, pretty much, that got the blame. But now I'm noticing that every time they say something, it's like, those atheists, don't forget we're going to tell those atheists what's up. You know, it's not so much about the Jews. They're still the Crusaders. You know, they can't let go of the American bombs coming down. But they've really brought in their love for the Jews recently. Or, I'm sorry, the atheists recently, just in political things. Just when they're talking about politics, they're like, watch out for the atheists. Because I totally think you're right about the whole... They've hit a brick wall when it comes to the atheists. They can play around with Christians. You know, they're kind of debating within the same realm here, you know, so they can play with each other. But when they're debating with a atheist, or when an atheist comes up against a Muslim, it's really embarrassing, honestly, for the Muslim. So, you know, that's why I can totally understand this. Do you have the video?
But this guy now, I mean, I managed 1 hour of this nonsense, and I did like 3 facepalms a minute when listening to this. But now imagine 2 full days of this. I mean, this is horror. I think this is, and he doesn't have a clue what an atheist really is, and he says atheists are this and this and this and this, and none of it is true. And this is okay. And I remember he once wanted to debate me on his show, right, which never materialized somehow. And he doesn't realize there's no real debate here, because, I mean, Islam would just make claims, all right? I refute them. The end. I mean, what is there to debate? I mean, he makes a claim about the Quran, you know, like this thing.
Well, of course he's going to come back at you. He's not going to say, "Oh, Jin, you're so right."
Yeah, but like what can he claim? He can only claim what is in the Quran. That the Quran says that, I don't know, that mountains
they
are
repeat
pegs,
themselves,
right?
don't they?
And then I say, okay, the Quran says that mountains are pegs, but there are no pegs. Okay, so now I go into some explanation, I refute it, I show he's wrong. But how can you debate this? There is no debate.
I agree with you. This is the problem of the day.
What can you debate? You can debate about the name of the angel who came down and hugged Muhammad or something. That you can debate. But at the end of the day, there's nothing that you could talk if he doesn't provide the evidence. But now, I don't want to get off on this. If someone wants to believe that there's a God and who wrote a book which is so bad, entire sections are incomprehensible, well, then so be it. But I don't need to debate it. So if anybody wants to watch this, it's Understanding Atheism, session 1 to 7. It's Asadullah Ali. I don't know if I'm going to put the link in there, but anyway, there's 7 parts, so there's definitely in agony. So if you want to really feel like what a masochist does, I mean, then go ahead and watch it. Or maybe I will put it there in case you want to see it. It's actually quite funny. I just get angry after a while, but if you are that way inclined, go and watch it. Okay, after the video of the week, we have the misconception of the week. And this is something I found on the London Dawah movement, I think it was, one of these Dawah channels. And it's a comment by an Abu Amir Saifullah. Now, Abu Amir knows exactly what natural selection is, and especially that atheists all love natural selection. For some odd reason, he knows this. I don't know where he knows, but he knows. So his idea is based on the arguments that the atheists present. Now, atheists don't have arguments. There is no argument for the lack of not having something. Right? If I don't believe that dragons exist, I have no arguments that dragons don't exist before somebody does anything. I don't have.
He's talking about scientific arguments, I think, because when we debate,
well, atheist has nothing to do with science.
We're like, our argument is evolution. Of course, we can make people without coming from animals. They say 6,000 years. We point to fossils. Those are our arguments. Our arguments are. I think he's talking about scientific things that we point to.
Yes, of course. But the thing is, if evolution, the theory of evolution, if somebody were to come up now and say the theory of evolution is wrong, and here's how it really happens, would that change my attitude towards any of the gods? No. I mean, that's stupid. I mean, it wouldn't change my attitude at all. I'm not dependent on the theory of evolution. I'm not dependent on the evolution that happens in nature. It doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is that I don't know whether there are gods, not whether evolution is correct or not. But anyway, so he says, based on the arguments that the atheists present, it means when, I like how he also capitalizes it, when atheists buy a flat pack of furniture from IKEA, they don't follow assembly instructions. They wait for natural selection to construct the item for them.
What the fuck? Is this a joke?
No, this is on Facebook. This is
that makes no sense. It's like saying when a Muslim buys an IKEA package, they just start praying and hope Allah puts it together.
No, that actually makes sense because they do this. But
they do that, don't they? They do that.
This is why I call this the misconception of the week, because this is so stupid. It is so ridiculous. It is so childish. It is so everything. When an atheist buys something from IKEA, he doesn't follow the assembly instructions. He waits for natural selection to construct the item.
That is quite the joke.
Oh, goodness. Okay. Let me quickly go into the news for this week. What happened last week? Now, Quirky Quarks has made me aware of a speech by our favorite sperminator, the Dawah man. And he rocked up at a UK charity event where he openly made some anti-Semitic remarks and then praised jihad. And this was made public. Now, there were quite a few red faces, but the supervising authority in the UK will not cancel the charitable tax-free status for this institution just because they're ineffective or troubling. No. But what does it take to shut them down? I mean, do they need to have a, I don't know, discount sale of AK-47s or what?
I mean, I don't know what is going on with the UK, per se. There are so many ridiculous things going on over there with Anjem Choudhury running around free. So many people like that. So many mosques where there's video. Yeah, I don't know what's going on in Britain. It's weird. They arrest Tommy Robinson, but they don't take in Anjem Choudhury. It's very...
It's weird.
I don't know what it is.
Okay, and then 2 quick topics, because I can't totally ignore Daesh. Because Daesh is now... Because the UAE stopped bombing the Daesh infrastructure when the Jordanian pilot was burnt, because they said, okay, this is a low. What are we doing here? Anyway, they've resumed airstrikes, and now they're targeting Daesh where it hurts the most, and that is money. So they're now targeting.
Did you say UAE resumed?
Yeah, United Arab Emirates. Sorry.
Yeah, so they stopped and they started again. Yeah.
They resume now, and they're targeting refineries because they're making 1 million a day. Daesh is, okay. And now, if they're taking out the refineries, they're losing the money, and then they can't finance all the the stuff that they're making.
You know, this is kind of bad because one of the problems that created Daesh in the first place is the problems, like economic problems that are coming from the area, so the Sunnis don't get the benefits. And now they're destroying all of the infrastructure that exists in the Sunni areas now with the bombings. Now, I don't know what the solution is, but if you're going to be destroying all of the infrastructure, what happens when Daesh loses, and then now you have to...
Okay, this is the point that I was just going to get to.
I'm so sorry,
because because I was going to say, because at the moment this will help, because it dries up the income for Daesh, but then Daesh is going to go down anyway, I think. So what happens once they are down, then who's going to rebuild all the refineries? Then they're going to have to call it, because UAE can't build refineries. Then you have to get in expats again. Then you have to get in the UK, France, and the USA, of course, to rebuild the refineries. And then everybody's going to say, well, you see, this was just for the oil, and this is why the USA did this. In reality, the whole thing is completely different this time. But it's quite funny. And now they have a second front, which is in Libya, which is quite odd, because now Daesh is saying, well, we're getting hit pretty hard in Syria and in Iraq. Let's go to Libya. But now Egypt is stepping in and saying, okay, they are now hitting the Libyan Daesh with airstrikes. And again, now we have a problem because Qatar was not impressed, and once again the Arab League is split, and so this is like a huge
and the
problem.
Al Qaeda in Yemen has now declared itself to be ISIS in Yemen.
Oh, really? I didn't even know that. Okay. Oh my God. Okay, really, I don't know where this is going to stop. I don't know what this is going to do. And like you said, I don't think there is one best solution. I think it's just, I don't know how to stop this. I don't know whether you can stop violence with violence, or whether you should just isolate them. I don't know.
I think it starts with stopping the ideology of Wahhabism being funded around the world like it's, cookies and candies. Because if you look at it, this is a new phenomenon, and it's come mostly out of this funding, crazy funding that's been happening in the Muslim world by Saudi Arabia, by the, and let's not deny the fact that we in America, I say we because I live here, you're not, I'm American, you're not an American, we have been kind of, if not letting a blind eye to this, Saudis are our best allies, presumably. 19, how many out of the 19 hijackers were Saudi?
I think 3 of them.
There's 3? No, more like 15 out of the 19 were Saudi, and then there was like 7 or like 5 Egyptians or something.
Weren't they from all over the show? Okay, it doesn't matter, yeah.
Majority of them were actually from Saudi Arabia, and then the next majority of the country was Egypt. But what I'm saying is, these are exactly where you find these kinds of... Sayyid Qutb was from Egypt. Abdul Wahhab was in Saudi Arabia. That's what they're spreading. This isn't a coincidence that this kind of ideology leads to this kind of terrorism, I think. Because you see it every time it's the same group of people. Every time it's the Wahhabist-influenced Salafi ideology that,
Okay, if we're talking about Salafi, Wahhabi, and that, we need to explain that these are based on people who at some stage decided that the Quran and the first 4 caliphs are the rightly guided ones, and they are the only ones who are providing the true Islam, based on the caliphate and based on what God actually wanted. So
technically you could rule out Uthman because they never really quote him because he really wasn't as good of a caliphate as they wished that he was.
But Ali was later, so they need to include him.
Well, they don't really even include him. They don't like Ali as much. They point to him. They really, what they're talking about is Abu Bakr time and Omar's time.
And Umar. And why not Ali? We explained in the last show when you explained the split between Shias and Sunnis, and Ali was the first one, and his son then, who started.
Ali was pretty much the reason where they broke up. They wanted Ali to be the leader.
So if you want to know what happened, you'll have to go to the last show where
and the one before, actually. We've had two about Shias.
And the last thing I want to talk about with Daesh, because this is something that a lot of Muslims don't understand, and that is that Daesh are only copying what Muhammad did. Okay, so Muhammad, according to the Sunnah, according to the Hadiths, according to his biography, is exactly that person who started raping, enslaving, torturing, plundering, killing, and so on. So all that Daesh are doing is exactly what Muhammad was described as having done in the Islamic texts.
I would say, this is very nice because I actually use Daesh in my notes right now just to explain the rapid expansion. It's very similar to how Daesh rapidly expanded.
And now this should lead you up to the topic of today, which is imperialism. And I turn it over to you, and go for it.
Very nice turn over, or I'm sure there's a better word in the TV industry. Segue, yeah. Great segue right here. So, okay, I'm going to talk about Islamic imperialism, and I have lots of notes on this, so I think we're going to have to split it up into two. On the first side, I'm going to start of just the basic roots of the Arab Empire and how it started, and why it was it was able to expand so fast, okay? This is pretty much what I'm going to spend on today. And then tomorrow, or next week, hopefully, or as much time as I'll get, I'm going to work on trying to explain how the culture of Islam formed. So something came out of Arabia by the name of Islam. What did it look like? And then what happened to it in the next few centuries when it was an empire, under the Abbasids, under the Umayyads? Because this is kind of where we get Islam from, right? And, majority of people get it. And this is exactly where the Wahhabists come from. They don't accept any of these empires as Islamic. So when we say Islamic Golden Age, which is a huge misconception, which we can talk about later anyway, they don't even look at that as an Islamic Golden Age. For them, the Islamic Golden Age was before this, So when the Wahhabists or the fundamentalists, the Salafi type of ideology, there's different branches. They try to go back even before what we call the Islamic Golden Age. So they don't even count that part of the history of Islam as anything legitimate, though that's where we get most of our Islam from. Bukhari, all those are from that period. Tabari, all of the Islamic architecture, which is a misconception in the name by itself, is completely imported. Lots of things, which I'll explain here. Anyway, so I'm going to start with the roots in Arabic, like the nomads and the Bedouins in Arabia. That's where I'm just going to start. And if you could help me, like you always do, stop with the questions and such.
Absolutely.
All right, so the Arabs in Arabia started out having different animistic religions, and the Bedouin way of life was the more honorable way of living, almost. It was the more traditional Arab way of living. So there was traditionally in the Arabian Peninsula, there was these few cities which were, you could say, trading cities, and then everything else was governed by the Bedouin tribes. Now, each of these were different tribes. There were tribal feuds. Each tribe had their own god. Okay? Mecca, from before Islamic times, was one place where all of these tribes were able to come and put their weapons away. So in Mecca, there was no violence was allowed, and everyone would have their gods in this thing in the Kaaba, which literally means cube in Arabic, in that building, and that's where Mecca kind of got its boom from. In the post-Islamic times, there was pretty much tribal fighting going on in every part of the country except in Mecca. And this led to lots of trading, because when people can't fight, trading happens, you know? And Mecca grew into a, I don't want to say cosmopolitan city, because how cosmopolitan can it be that south in the desert? But there was Jews living there, there was Arab Jews, there was Arab Christians living there, and there was all these different kinds of Bedouin tribal gods, which people like Lot and all these different names, you know, the moon gods and animistic types of gods. Now, this is the beginning of it. And now Muhammad comes, and he pretty much, his whole thing is just, I'm going to skip over what Muhammad did personally. We're going to get past that, but he united everything, okay? So one of the things that he was able to do, now if you kind of know something about barbarian warfare, like invader warfare, like what made the Vikings successful? It was the ability for them to travel the seas, hit where they want, and then retreat. You know, not fight where they knew they were going to lose, and then they had the sea to back into. You know, the Arabs had the desert, and that's what the Bedouins were good for. They could travel through the desert like, you know, other people couldn't. So a normal army couldn't venture out into the desert, but the Bedouins were just good at going quickly through this. So they were more cavalry. Okay, so this gets a little bit interesting and important, because when you see what gave them the original boost in military power to conquer Arabia was the unity of the Bedouin cavalry troops with the city-dwelling infantry troops. Okay, so the cities, their form of warfare, they had infantry members, and you know they also probably had cavalry too, but it was majority in infantry force that didn't leave the city limits. So you don't see them coming into the desert. Okay, the Bedouins were they were raiders, so they were just good at hitting caravans, hitting and running. You know, hitting any kind of civilized, unguarded anything that they could loot from, and then running away into the desert before the main army arrives. Okay, that's kind of the Viking way of doing it. Does that make sense? How the Vikings kind of raided and then went back, and raided and went back?
Yep.
Okay. And so, to them, the desert was like the ocean, and they were good at desert fighting. So Muhammad, what he does is, after he brings together Mecca and Medina, and he has some successes militarily, what he does with Islam is, Islam, for the first time in pretty much the history of the people living there that they knew, put aside all their gods. So one of the reasons they were having so many tribal feuds was because they were having so many religious feuds. They were saying, my God's better, your God's better. And a lot of times it was about water. So like one guy's water problem would turn into this religious war between these two tribes. You know what I'm saying? And they would make it about religion. So he said, these are all false gods. We have one God, so we're technically one tribe. And this is why he was able to get a lot of supporters in the Arabs of the Arabian Peninsula. Okay, he kind of, you know, not everyone was for it, but especially after his military conquests, people were like, well, he's winning, and it doesn't seem so bad. Now we're all one. You know, this is like, that's where the whole Ummah came from. The Ummah is the new tribe. Put all tribes away. Now we are one tribe. We're equal, black, Arab, whatever. Now, so one of the reasons
the communist streak.
Yes, he actually has a lot of interesting socialist aspects of why it's so appealing to a lot of people, even until today. But anyway, so I was reading this book that I was reading. It's by Peter Brown, historian, apparently there's another Peter Brown, and it's called Late Antiquity, 700s to 900s, and pretty much his... okay, so what we're talking about right now is why were they able to expand so fast into other parts outside of the peninsula. Pretty much Peter Brown's idea, which is a lot of other historians support this, is that the main reason that they were able to split or expand so fast was, one, their ability to use the desert as an ocean like the Vikings did, so attack and retreat, and two, the weakness of the empires. Sasanian Empire and the Roman Empire had been fighting each other for so long, centuries. Before the Sasanians, it was the Arasids, or the Parthians, as they're known in the West. They were fighting, and these two empires had completely destroyed each other, really. Right before the Arab conquest, the Sasanians had been surrounding Constantinople unsuccessfully for a while. So putting siege to a city takes a lot out of everyone's resources. So there was a siege of Constantinople going on by the Sasanians for a while. So you realize how weak all of these people were, okay? I'm talking about Rome, exactly. All these people in the east. And just because we look at the Sasanians putting siege on Constantinople means nothing, because in reality, Rome completely came and sacked Ctesiphon, the capital of Sasanians, which is in Baghdad. So it wasn't like one was more powerful. It was really one general would just get all powerful and then come and ravage parts of one's empire, and then they would have to retreat, and then it would just cause so much death and destruction, and then they would have to just kind of recuperate and try to do it again. Now, whilst the Rome didn't have so much leadership problems, there was a bunch of leadership problems going on in the Sasanian period. So we have, by Professor Turaj Daryoi is the guy's name. His book is, I think it's just called The Sasanians. He does the most research on Sasanian history. And it's I like him a lot because he tries to get into daily life. And that's why his works helps me to judge the Islamic conquest and how it affected normal people. But anyway, he explains how during the Sasanian times there was actually multiple kingships going on, but all under the Sasanian name because the empire was so weak that it had split into different parts. Each, I don't want to say prince, but each general kind of controlling their own land because the main king had lost his power, but they were ruling over this area called Iran Shah. And that's where the word Iran comes from, actually. So if you trace, the word of Iran, it comes back. It goes back, it's an Avestan word, but the first time that we see people using Iran for this kind of land was during Sasanian times. So this Iran Shah was a confederacy almost of Sasanian/Parthian noble families running, but then fighting each other as well. So during Abu Bakr's time, Abu Bakr first attacks Rome. Right? Not Rome, or not the city of Rome, but the Byzantines is what I meant to say. He first goes into the Levant, Syria, takes them. And we have quotes of things like Bukhari. This is from the sources of Bukhari, actually, where they say that, where he says, I have been commanded to fight against people until they testify to the fact that there is no God but Allah, and believe in me that I am the messenger of God and all that I have brought. This is Muhammad when he's fighting in the beginning, right? So he doesn't mind expanding into Damascus or whatever, but he doesn't do any of that. This is Abu Bakr. Even in the Quran it says, make war, Quran 8:40, make war on them until idolatry is no more and Allah's religion reigns supreme. They're going to bring quotes that say, if you kill someone, it's like you killed everyone, or save someone, it's like you saved everyone. Don't do that. But then these verses are later, and we all know that they supersede it according to the Quran itself. That the later verses supersede. So in 1634, they take the Syria-Palestine region. This is under Abu Bakr. And we have quotes from, they're not really quotes, they're second-hand quotes, you could say.
You did not say 1634, it's 634.
I'm sorry, did I say 1634?
That's why I'm just in case somebody heard this.
Oh, no, my bad. 634, yeah. Sophronius, this is right after the death of Muhammad, so you have to think, this is like 2-3 years right after the death. So this expansion happens really quick. The way that Peter Brown writes it is, they had no idea that they were going to make this empire. They just wanted Arabia at that point, Success brings success. All of a sudden, they're raiding into Christian lands, and then they see that there's no Roman army. You know what I'm saying? So they go and then they take this Roman boundary city, and then the Roman army that comes to take it back can't even take it back, and then they take another one, and they realize these guys are really completely emptied out. They can't do anything. So all of a sudden they decide, okay, now we're going to go and take all of the eastern coast of the Mediterranean. And they do it really fast. So within 3 to 4 years of Muhammad's death, they have all the Syria-Palestine region. And they have a quote of some Sophronius, he's a patriarch of the Jews, and he says that, he says that Christians can't travel anywhere because quote, fear of the Saracen and their savage, barbarous, and bloody sword. So during this time, it wasn't all flowers, okay? They did take land by force. It was bloody. But they didn't convert everyone by the sword, every single person. Do you know what I'm saying? So they would just attack big cities. If they resisted, they would kill as many people as they needed to take the city. If they didn't resist, they would let them live, but they would have to pay the jizya or convert and all that stuff that we know very well. So first they take the Eastern Mediterranean. Now, because I focused more on the Sasanian part, I know much more detail about what happened there, and because the Islamic Empire kind of shifts east during the Abbasid and then later periods, so it's good to know what's going on in the Sasanian period to know why it shifts east during the Abbasids from Damascus to Baghdad. Why did he change the capital from Damascus to Baghdad? Because there was this cultural thing he needed to go towards. Now, there's quotes of them saying that the destruction of lots of churches and monasteries and sacking of every town that fights. So if they don't fight, they will not destroy your town. But if you fight, everything gets burned. Burn villages, fields, Arabs overran country. This is by Bat Yaor. This is his quote. And this is 2 years after Abu Bakr died. Omar came. Now, Omar is the real scourge. So if you thought Abu Bakr could conquer fast, Omar is the sword of Islam. So he's known for being able to conquer the most amount of land in the fastest time. Now, at this point, Peter Brown, am I not going on too many tangents?
No, that's fine. The only thing is you always need to come back and somehow put this into perspective where we are, which you just did. Because you always need to come back from one caliph to the next, and you need to understand that there is not one ummah, but you need to remember that the caliphs were killed by their own people, all right? So there was a lot of internal resistance as well.
Well, I'm putting in the bigger picture right now. I'm not really going into deep about who the caliph is at this point, or dates per se, because I've got some dates here which I don't really want to say because I have different dates of different times. So I'm going to talk about something that's going on in 1633, and then something that's going on in 633, and then something that goes on in 833, and then I'm going to go back to 633. So I don't want to confuse people with dates anymore. So I'm not going to use dates as much as I can. Try to just put this in the bigger perspective. So this is where we're going to bring Daesh in. Now, if you guys know anything about what's going on in Daesh and ISIS, why were they able to conquer this land, which they have now under the Islamic State, as they call it, a state? It's really not a state, it's just a whatever. But what happened is Syria was completely destroyed from the inside. As we all know, the Syrian rebellion, the FSA versus Assad, the country was completely destroyed. There was no unity. Iraq had kind of the same issue going on since the American invasion. So you could almost relate this to one of them, Iraq almost being the Sasanian Empire and Syria being the Roman Empire. Can I use that as an example?
Sure, yeah.
These are two countries, yet Syria and Iraq didn't fight each other. In that time, those two empires, that's why they were so weak, because they were fighting each other. And then you see how Daesh completely, real fast, with nothing, literally just jeeps and dushkas in the back of a jeep, were able to take land from actual armies. How is this even possible? It's because exactly what was going on back there. Those countries were so broken up and so focused on other things around their empire that they couldn't even deal with this land being taken by the Arabs.
Well, yeah, but hang on, you need to point out something else. This is now Muslims fighting against Muslims, which in the Quran is strictly prohibited. So there's a lot of troops, Iraqi troops, which prefer to run away rather than kill another Muslim. So there's also this spiritual aspect, which also plays a role.
Well, there's also a spiritual aspect that plays back then, too. You know? Like, you could say that the Arabs, their success was for their spirituality. The other people, not so much. But there's accounts of people joining him. Like, we have accounts of when he was invading Tesfan, Omar, he was using Persian cavalry commanders. So he had Persian cavalry with him while he invaded the rest of Sasanians.
Well, this was the strategy. Instead of just killing everybody, they rather converted them and then used them to their own purposes.
Except they weren't converted cavalry either. But yeah, okay, yeah. True. What I'm saying is that when a state breaks up, or it wasn't a state back then, when a structure breaks up, no one can claim anything of loyalty anymore. Everyone's looking for their own self-interest. So you can buy off commanders easily. So when the commander sees that his army is going down, of course he's going to come and join your army if you think you can pay as well as the other guy did, or if better. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of it was people kind of, you could say they bought off Roman fighters, which weren't even Roman fighters, they were just local fighters, and they bought off Persian fighters. But one of the points that I really want to point out is they didn't want to expand. It just kind of happened because they were having so many successes, and they didn't realize how weak the other guys were, that once raids just turned into conquests. You know, they raided, and then they're like, oh, wow, no one's coming. We're just going to stay here. They raided to another town, and then they realized that the army's nothing. It's completely a skeleton of what it used to be. And so little by little, the raids turned into a conquest. So, and this is the interesting part, that this is where I think the Quran gets written during these times. So even if Muhammad didn't imagine that the world was going to turn under or become under the Sharia, this is where this ideology definitely came in. So during this period, they realized, hey, we're going to make the whole world under the Sharia. Look at how easily we took down Rome and Sasanian Persia, the two biggest empires. We can do anything. And this is very similar to what's going on in Daesh right now, I think. Anyway, and so they attacked. Now I have some numbers here, which, like for example, the city of Istaq in south of Iran, they had 40,000 nobility killed just in that one city. You know, in Shiraz, they had killed 100,000, and these are just civilians, not soldiers, okay? And then I looked into why this happened. So there was lots of killing going on. It wasn't like it was a breeze through these different lands. And if you remember what I said earlier, the Sasanian Empire was split up into different parts. So every time they would conquer one province, they would have to reconquer another province separately. So the Persian area took way much longer to conquer than the eastern part, because Rome quickly went to Constantinople and put their walls there, you know. So they backed off pretty much all their land in Asia and went to Constantinople and stopped there. And that's where they stopped the Arab conquest. The Persian thing, it took longer. They were able to take the whole thing, but parts of Fars wasn't conquered until 890. So that's like 300 years after this. So there's still parts of this Islamic Empire that we say, which isn't really under the Islamic Empire. And like I said, I looked into why these people in the Fars were killed. Apparently, this one Fars city is, you know, they give you three options. You either convert, you go under dhimmitude, which you pay two different kinds of taxes. One is a head tax, so for every person that you have If you're a person and you're alive, you pay if you're not a Muslim, and you pay on land. Or you can fight, and if you do fight, you're all going to die and we're going to sell you into slavery. So if you do fight, you can't just like fight and then lose and say, hey, now we're going to convert. You know what I'm saying? You have the choice in the beginning. So if you say, I'm going to fight, and then decide to convert at the end after killing some Muslims, that's not going to go straight. They're going to kill you and they're going to take everything, and they're going to sell you off to slavery. So apparently these two cities, which I have the statistics for, the 40,000 and the 100,000 killed, were a few of these cities that really tried to not listen. And they kept on getting conquered, and then they would kick them out, and then they would come back in and then massacre some more people, and then they would get kicked out, and they would come back in, massacre more people. And so it added up to 100,000, and in the other case, 40,000. So the early Islamic period is not a period of constant oneness. It is a completely, it's constant revolt and subdue. Do you know what I'm saying? We always think that. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you said, do you know what I'm saying? Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't know that this was rhetoric.
Yeah, we say this. I'm sorry, I talk like a street thug sometimes in America. I have some weird friends. I'm sorry. I shouldn't be saying, you know what I'm saying, but but they, where was I? I totally forgot. What were we saying a second ago?
No, you were just summarizing what we're looking at the early ages.
Oh yeah. So it wasn't a just
Islamic expansion.
Right. It wasn't just one empire under peace. It was more like constant revolt and subdue. Constant revolt and subdue. And this is mostly on the eastern part, so Iraq eastward, not the Roman part. Because like I said, the Roman part, Rome pretty much evacuated. The Sasanian part, you can't really evacuate because the people are living there. You know, if they were to invade Rome itself, maybe it would have been the same. You know, it would have been a constant revolt and subdue. But in the Iranian plateau, it was mostly constant revolt and subdue. Because like we were saying, these people spoke a different language, they had another religion. And so yeah, that's what I have for the first part of my...
So what you're saying is that the initial expansion happened because Arabs went north initially, then they moved northeast, and they moved west, and they were surprised that there was so little resistance that they just pressed on. And then they took more and more of the region, and then took the people either converting them or using them as soldiers, as foot soldiers, or as cannon fodder or whatever, and then they just carried on going. And then what happened is that the caliphs then said, okay, thank you very much, now impose the taxes on them, get some bucks, get them back here, give me the bucks, and then we will hire more people so that we can go and expand even more.
Yes. And here's another case. I was always thinking, you know, I always thought that there was definitely much more conversion going on than people talk about. But this author makes a good point where he says that you have to remember that in the beginning of the empire, they needed money, and all the taxes is coming from non-Muslims. So they needed to keep, there was instances where they kept themselves, like the city of Kufa in Iraq right now, was created as a military camp by Umar, just so they wouldn't go and mix with the Persians in the middle city, you know, because they didn't really want to convert them or be influenced by them, because they liked the taxes coming in, you know. And so this is also an interesting argument. But then he also argues that this breaks down after they become so rich that during the Umayyad period, they just do it by force because they don't need money anymore. Do you know what I'm saying? And other Muslim empires, at some point when they get rich enough so they don't need taxes, then they start actually converting people. But this happens kind of a few hundred years after the death of Muhammad.
So, but then you also have an additional misconception, because a lot of Muslims say, well, there was no force in those days. They were just running around holding the Quran in the left, and they did have a sword in the right, but they were using more the left than the right. And as soon as they held up the Quran, the people converted en masse.
Oh no, this is complete bullshit.
And this is why, for example, in Egypt and even all the way to Spain, the people were welcoming the Muslims, the Arabs, because they said they are so much better than the Romans. Like, this is what Hamza Tzoltzis once said. He said that the Bishop of Nicaea in Alexandria wrote that they were so welcoming the Muslims because they were freeing them from the Romans. And I went and looked at those documents, and I found this is utter bullshit. It's a total lie. It's the opposite. They were saying they were so bothered by the taxes and the burden of the taxes because they were bleeding them dry, and they were destroying. Instead of just taxing them, they were starting to destroy everything just to get more money out of them. This was a horrible time period.
And
if
this
you
is
look at this.
And this is how you convert people. You put them under so much pressure that after some years they just find it better economically to be Muslim, and then after a few generations they forget what they were, and now everyone's Muslim.
But now, there's one thing I need to add, though, and that is there were people who were convinced by the religious aspect at a later date. So there were people who then said, well, the Jews are actually worse, and that Islam was a superior belief system, who then went and said, yes, we like the idea of there being a God, and then if you do something good for yourself, you're doing something good for the community, and this is good for everybody, and if you are good for everybody, then your God gives you an appropriate reward. A lot of people like this idea. So it's not only the conversion by the sword, and it's not only the conversion by the Quran. It's a mixture of both, and we need to be honest about this. Yes, there were people who actually liked it, but it's no way the case that everybody did and everybody was converted only by the Quran. Now, in those days... Okay.
I'm sorry. You're completely right, because there are so many... We have very easy evidence to look at of where these rebellions happened within the Islamic community. If everyone liked it, why would there be rebellions? You know, and they weren't Islamic rebellions. They weren't like, we want to start our own Islamic ummah. No, they were totally against all.
And the thing is that Ike is just pointing something else, which I was going to say at the end of this. All this has a huge, big caveat, because this is according to the standard narrative. Okay, there is nothing here that is following historic sources. There's nothing.
Which one? What are you talking about?
What you are saying, the whole sequence of events with Muhammad and Abu Bakr and none of this.
Kind of. Some of this is, though. Some of this is actually going against what the normal idea is.
Well, this is the standard narrative, okay? That Muhammad existed, that Muhammad was born in Mecca, that Mecca was a center.
I don't even go into Muhammad. That's not. That's going off of that.
Yeah, but we need to stress here that you are basing this off the standard narrative, because, all right, just to explain to everybody, because we have a lot of new viewers here. There's like 3 or 4 different ways of looking at Islam. All right, you can take the standard narrative where the guy was sitting in the cave and God sent an angel to convey a message he had written a couple of billion years ago, to convey the sentence by sentence, word for word, to the guy sitting in the cave, who would then go to his people, repeat this message to them, who would then repeat it to scribes, write it down, and that is how the Quran came about. Then 200 years later, the biography was written. 300 years later, the Hadiths were written to explain everything. So we have different texts at different level. If you take the standard narrative of the guy sitting in the cave, that is the standard Muslim narrative. Then you have the in-between, the modified standard narrative, which means that you don't believe Muhammad sitting in the cave, but you say, we are not sure where the Quran actually came from. We just know that there was a story of a Muhammad which appeared in the 8th, 9th, whatever, 10th century, and then we had the Quran where we don't really know when this happened. And then you have the revisionist version, which says we will only follow what's history and what the evidence says. And then you come to a totally different result.
Well, this is why I would say this is a historical base, because if you realize, I totally skipped over Muhammad. You know,
Okay, but no, but you started off like that in the beginning because there's for any of the initial things that Mecca existed, that Mecca was a center, because you started off saying that everything started.
Well, the Mecca was a center for the thing that's pretty historical though. Like, you know, I'm getting these are completely historical.
What is historical
books? The fact that they were tribal feuds, each tribe had their own god, and then they would come to Mecca, and they wouldn't fight in Mecca, and that's why Mecca became
correct. But it was not that Mecca was now the spiritual center for Islam.
Oh no!
Exactly. This is what we need to stress. Yeah. Exactly. This is the point that I'm trying to make. So there's three different ways of looking at this, and we need to point out what is what. So if you look at only historical texts, the story is a little bit different. I mean, everything starts much later and much further north.
I would actually say that I try to keep my eyes pretty much on the historical text, except some parts that you can't really, you know, I can't really talk about Muhammad without bringing in maybes and, you know, who knows, that kind of stuff.
Because if you look at the beginning of the Arab conquest, if you start with the Umayyad period, they didn't live in Mecca or Medina. I mean, this guy was in Damascus. So,
and this is actually where I think Islam that we know is from this after period. This is the Islam that people love. The Islam that people don't like is the Islam of Muhammad and Abu Bakr and Omar. Once you get into the Umayyad and more specifically the Abbasid period, where they actually go away from their original Islamic ideas, then you actually see the golden age, so to speak, come up, and all these scientists, and then this is what Muslims like to point to. So Muslims like to point to the part where is the least Islamic of their Islamic history.
Okay, I'm going to open up the chat, so if anybody wants to contribute, ask.
And just to say, next week, I keep saying tomorrow, next week I'm going to start from the Umayyads and to the Abbasids, and how this totally is different from the backstory, because this is where they start actually taking in other people's cultures. This is where the art comes in, all the different ideas, which I think are very important. And I actually wanted to get into that more, but if you want to get into something else, that's fine. I had some pictures.
No, continue, because at the moment I am struggling with YouTube, because YouTube is not allowing me to do anything, because they're saying, we have a lot of requests on your network. An error occurred, there was a problem saving your comment, please try again, you can't do this. I'm not allowed to do anything.
I'll just continue. Alright, so I'm going to put some pictures here. Now, we're going to skip a little detail, and I'm going to get into the Umayyads and the Abbasids. Now, let's see, Umayyads. Now, when you look at the Umayyad period, once the Arabs move up from the Arabian Peninsula, and so the capital goes to Damascus, they start realizing, oh, there's civilization out here that we could use, right? The Romans, you know, that's where the Umayyads, or Damascus was under Rome at that time. They realized there's so many things that they could learn, and one of the things that they pretty much started inheriting things. They started using coins from before. I'm going to show you some pictures, which I think are very interesting about. These are Sasanian coins.
All right, then let me just put the focus on you. There you go.
All right.
And I managed, finally, I managed to go to all comments and managed to put the link in there. So if you feel like joining afterwards, just go to the Gin and Tonic Show, go to the About, then click on the live link, and then in the live link you will see the chat, in other words, all the different comments. And in the comments, you will see something by the Gin and Tonic Show, which is a link. Click on that, and you're going to join us here. Okay, Arash, take it away.
All right. So let me just share the screen here. Okay. Now, the first thing we have here, this is a Sasanian coin. Now, which is really interesting and kind of sad, I would think, is there are so many of these in very good condition that you can buy.
Shared. You have not shared anything, hey? You know that?
Yeah, yeah. They're so. You see it now?
Arash open capture smile. Ah, something is happening. Something is happening. Oh, a coin! Yes! Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Do you see it?
Both sides.
Okay, this is the back side and the front side. Now, first of all, do you see it? This is a Sasanian coin from...
But this is the first time that a god is mentioned on a coin. I remember this coin.
Oh, no. Is it? Is it the first time a god is mentioned?
It's the first time a god is mentioned on a coin, because you still have the Zoroaster
the thing on the top. Yeah. Well, I mean, we've had... There's old ecumenic...
It cannot be Muhammad because you have a face on there.
Oh, no, of course. This is Shapur. This is the coin of Shapur, or Khosrow. They're very similar looking. All these Persian kings are always depicted looking similarly together. Now, do you see my mouse on here too?
Yes.
Okay, so if you here on this side, this is written in Middle Persian, so it's written in Pahlavi. This is the name of. It's got dates on it, and it's got the name of the king on it, so we know exactly when this coin was from. So here you see the Pahlavi text right here, and on this side. Here you see the head of the king, the godly thing on his head, and here is a fire altar, because there's Zoroastrians, right? You see this fire altar?
Yep.
Now this is interesting. What else do you see on here which might kind of stand out? What do you see on here that would kind of...
Well, okay. Should I cheat or what? Because you see the crops and you see the steps and you see what else do you see?
You see the star and the crescent?
The crescent, yes.
Yes. This is the sign of Islam, isn't it? But apparently it started off way before this. Now, they adopt it from these coinages. Now I'm going to go forth. So this is one Sasanian coin. This is another Sasanian coin, which you can see the fire altar in the back, the king's head, the thing on his head, and then you have... Hold on.
This one
Here's another one you see. Do you see these? Fire altar, guardians, you have some astrological signs, and then you have the crescent and the star.
Yep.
This is the first Islamic coin. Now they use the exact same thing, except here they have barakah. You see that?
Yeah.
So the Islamic coins don't change anything because they don't really have the infrastructure, I would say. They're using the exact same coin, it's the face of Shapur. This is even a fire temple. Could you even imagine this under an Islamic country using these coins? And there's so many of these.
One which still had the Christian cross on it?
I'm sure there are ones that they adapted from the Romans which had Christian crosses on them. Here's another one. Here it says Bismillah down here. But then here it has the name of the caliph in Pahlavi. So they still have Pahlavi written on these Islamic coins. And you see they've kept the star and the crescent, which becomes the... as we progress through these coins, the star and the crescent stays, and then later just becomes the sign of Islam, which is completely interesting because it's a Sasanian coin thing. This is a... Zoroastrian astrological signal. Now, you see here it says Bismillah ar-Rahman. I can't read this because I can't read Pahlavi, but it also has dates. But this is an Umayyad or Umayyad period coin. So this is what year would this be? 700, 800s? So
could be, well, it could be anything 770, it could be 820,
yeah. But this is pre-Abbasid. They were using these coins throughout all of it because even the Abbasids started using some of these coins. This is another one where you see they keep... Oh, actually, this is a Sasanian one. This is not a... But they pretty much keep everything. And where's the other ones? I thought I had another one with... Oh, my. Anyway, I guess I don't have it saved on here. But you see the main idea. How they incorporate even the most non-Islamic things. This is a fire altar. They don't change this until way late into the Abbasid period. That's very interesting. So they realize, hey, we can't be printing fire altars on our Islamic coins per se. You know, here it says La ilaha or Bismillah and then the name of the guy. And then later, so they take away the fire altar, but they keep the head, and then later they just turn it. And then after late Abbasid period, completely takes this away and starts using just Arabic words. Okay, so I can stop there.
We need to, all right, let's clarify. The Umayyads were 660 to around 750. Okay.
Okay.
So that is the time period that this comes from.
This comes from, except that some of them, like this one, the one I'm showing here, and this one, is from the Sasanian period, so way before that. This is from like 400 AD.
Further to the northeastern as well.
What was that?
Is that also further to the northeast?
Well, they were minting these coins anywhere from Baghdad to Fars region in Iran. So
that's what I mean. Yes, that's what I mean.
Yeah, northeast of Arabia. Of
the Arabian Peninsula.
Yeah, and what you notice is, though, this is what I want to get into the next thing, is this is where the image of Islam comes out. You know, we get the star and the crescent. Then you get the Islamic architecture and the arts. None of this is actually originally Arab, because you don't see any of this in the Arabian Peninsula. You never see any historical mosques in the Arabian Peninsula that look like actual mosques that we see nowadays. They're all like block-looking things. Do you know what I'm saying? Because they, you know, they got their first idea of a mosque when they conquered the Damascus. What's that famous mosque in Damascus? That used to be a church. So they conquered this giant mosque in Damascus, and that's where the idea of kind of mosques came in. And then the Sasanians had the dome. That's where the dome comes from. And then so they inherit the dome, and then they add that to it. So the Sasanian or Islamic architecture is almost a misconception by itself, really, because none of this was available during that time, but they incorporated all these different things into it. And you know, there's a lot of this, which I want to get into onto the next episode if we can.
Okay, thank you for that. Abu Mulhid, welcome to the Gin and Tonic Show. What do you have for us? Do you have a comment? Do you have a question? Do you have a suggestion?
First, I was thinking about making first a comment on imperialism, and then a question for you, and then I leave. But when you were showing these coins, I was also thinking about this crescent moon and the star. I don't know about this, but this is maybe another question. But I know that in one of the symbols for the god Shiva in the Hindu religion is the crescent moon. And there are also other things, I think, like I think there were some kind of Hellenistic goddess or something that had the same. So the crescent moon and the star there is interesting research.
Yeah, I thought it was very interesting when I first saw that coin, and then I realized even the later Islamic coins still kept it, and then I saw it on old Islamic architecture, and so you realize, okay, this is kind of where it's going, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think it is like a heathen, or what do you say, heathen symbol. It's not from monotheistic religions at all.
Well, I mean, it depends. What do you consider Zoroastrianism to be? You know, when you look at Zoroastrianism, it has the same roots as Hinduism. So lots of gods in Zoroastrianism are very, very similar to the old Hindu gods. So Hinduism and Zoroastrianism really come from the same root.
Yeah, absolutely, they do. And
yeah.
And the funny thing with Shiva also, if you look at, have you read Ibn Taymiyyah's book of on the Sifat, the attributes of God? And I find, I don't know if this is just a coincidence, but it kind of some things looks kind of similar to Shiva. You know, he put his one foot in the fire, like Shiva put his one foot on this.
Yeah.
And I do a lot of things that is very suspicious.
And in the Islamic, especially in mathematics, you see so much Indian influence coming in, where it's completely claimed as Islamic, but it's originally Indian math, and then they use it. Like, for example, you know who Khwarazmi is?
Al-Khwarazmi,
Al-Khwarazmi, maybe Al-Khwarazmi.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah. He's actually a Persian, Khwarazm. He was from the area of Khwarazm, and he used his book was called the Book of Addition and Subtraction based on the methods of Hindu math or something like that. And this is where he takes the idea of sine, the sine function for an angle. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I know who you're talking about, but I'm not familiar with the details.
You know, like in an angle, the sine function of an angle. If you want to calculate different attributes of, like, it's like basic geometry or trigonometry. Anyway, the sine function is from Indian origin, and then during the Abbasid period, where they're funding so many schools, he brings in the sine, and then Khwarazmi kind of comes up with the cosine, the tangent, the cotangent, the secant, and the cosecant. So there's other parts to this, but it originally comes from India. So does the numeral system, you know. So there's a lot of these things where we think they're Islamic, but then we look at, oh wow, this isn't anything really Arabic at all, because we confuse Arabic with Islamic, I think, a lot of times.
Yeah, and that's
especially in art and science.
Yeah, I mean that's I think you can make a whole program just about like what's the influences in Islam from India. I mean,
I think that's what we want to spend on next time, actually.
Because I think that, I don't know, some things I don't think are. I don't know if you've seen these videos about like claiming that Mecca or the Kaaba and so on is like a Shiva temple. So I don't buy into that so much, but some things are kind of suspicious. So that's one thing that I would like to research, like what's the influences from India and so on.
I mean, India, I would say India and just East, really, because we see aspects of like the Buddhism ideas coming into.
Yeah, I know a quote from the Salaf, but this was an ether, so it's not from the Sunnah, but it's like, excuse me if I translate it from Arabic, but I'm happy with it. So it's مثل طالب الدنيا, then the guy who seeks the dunya, كمثل شارب ماء البحر, is like the one who
the ocean
drinks the ocean water. كلما شرب ازداد عطشا حتى قتله. So the more he drinks, the more thirsty he becomes until it kills him. I think, because I'm kind of interested in Buddhism too, that I saw that this is a comment to, I don't remember what text it was, but something in the Pali Canon, some like old people way before Islam made this comment. So in some I don't know how, but how it ended up like an ether in the tradition of Islam. That's weird.
Yeah, but the Islam is a huge mixture, because you find stuff from the Mesopotamian area, which is the Sumerians, Babylonians, Assyrians, and all that. I mean, the whole story of the whole the creation story of the universe, that Earth was one unformed shape and it was flattened and everything. The whole flood story, everything you find in the documents. Yeah. Then from the east side, from the Indians, you find two different parts of influence. One, you find the technological, mathematical and so on influence, and you find the spiritual influence. So if you read the Bhagavad Gita or something, you will see, like for example, the mountains that were like pigs. This is an Indian concept that they brought up, which you find replicated in the Quran. Then you find all the technology that the Indians in turn got from the Chinese and then passed on to the people who were writing the Quran. So the Quran is a huge mixture of different influences.
Yeah, I definitely think that. But I just, because some things, I mean, if you find influences from Judaism and Christianity, that's not so problematic for Muslims today. But if you can see that this is clearly from the Vedic scripture, this is a copy from the Vedic scripture, and I think this is a way you can argue with Muslims. And
oh yeah, I mean, I've used this in many videos where I've taken the quotes word for word from the Vedics, from the Vedics, from the different parts of it, and then I have shown how this part is replicated word for word almost in the Quran. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's I think you can write a book about that. So maybe we should devote a whole show just about Vedic religions and Islam. Okay, can I just say the things I was supposed to say because I have to go.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sure. Okay. Okay. So when you're talking about like imperialism and so on, you know, here in Scandinavia, I don't know how it is in the rest of the world, but we have a lot of lefties here. Nothing wrong about that. I mean, if you want to be a lefty, it's nothing wrong with that. But I think you should be free to have any opinion. But one thing that I find very ironic is that when you criticize Islam, they are like showing you the imperialist card. Like, you are on the imperialist side. You're on the imperialist United States and Israel and so on the side. And I find it very, and they are of course some kind of like apologist, or like they are on, for real political reasons, they are on the side of Islam in some weird sense. And I find it ironic because if you look at the history of Islam, it's built on the imperialism, and imperialism is a part of the Islamic ideology. So I find it so ironic that these anti-imperialistic guys try to defend Islam by being anti-imperialist, because I think it's such a contradiction.
So many contradictions we can come up with. I mean, I consider myself a liberal. I don't know if I would call myself a leftist, but I consider myself a liberal. But then we have all these liberals defending the Islamic ban of free speech. You know, they think that they're the, you know, free speech for everyone, women's rights. But then when it comes to Muslims, they defend all of that as, you know, another culture that we have to respect. But then, ironically, it's the culture that has the worst women's rights, worst freedom of speech, you know, and then they call themselves liberal. There's so many of these ironies. I mean, it's just, it's past.
Where does the liberal belong? Does it go left or right?
You can't really say that, because left or right is...
I'm joking.
But in the United States, they mean liberal is left in the States. But in Europe, we have like, it means...
Well, I'm talking about liberal values, like old, original liberal values.
Yeah, but you can't have old traditional liberal values,
like,
can you?
Like, no, like, I'm talking like Locke and you know, liberal thinkers.
Stuart Mill maybe also. He's maybe more like the left kind of liberal.
People who say that, you know, we have to have freedom of speech, freedom of voting in government, things like that. You know what I'm talking about? Like the French Revolution.
Yeah.
So,
it's absurd. It's absurd.
Yeah.
Okay, can I just say a last question, because I have to go. But what do you think about, and this is the same when we're talking about the expansion of Islam. What do you think of Tom Holland's proposal that it wasn't Islam that created the Arab Empire, but it was the Arab Empire that created Islam? And what do you think that really happened during those first maybe 100 years of Islam?
That's very interesting.
To the rest of it.
So you want to go away now from the standard Muslim narrative?
Yeah, I want to know, what do you think, maybe you can talk about that too, but what do you think really happened during those years? And and you can talk about this a long time, but did Muhammad exist? Maybe was it Abu Bakr first? And you can talk a lot about things. I have to go now, but I will continue listening to you.
We had a full show on this a couple of months ago. And we had the show where Tom Holland was on the show and he explained it.
Yeah, but I mean, linked to this subject with imperialism.
No, you can't.
Okay.
You can't. If you take, all right.
Okay, don't worry.
No, the thing is that for example, I don't see any evidence for the existence of Muhammad. All right. I think this was created later.
Doesn't exist at all?
Well, no, not at all. The way that it is explained in the Sunnah, in the biographies and the Hadiths, that is not the way that it happened. The way that I see it is that there was an expansion. The way that Muawiyah, he was the first one to understand that you can use religion to scare Muawiyah, the first Umayyad caliph.
Muawiyah?
Yeah.
So you're saying he was the first Muslim?
No, he was the first caliph who realized that you can use religion to scare the living daylights out of people and make them do what you want them to do. But he was not religious. He didn't give a continental shit about any gods. And it was only al-Malik who then said, okay, I'm going to use religion to its full potential. That he was the one who built the Al-Aqsa Mosque, who built the Dome of the Rock, who built all these buildings and the mosques. And he was the one who said, if you fight for me and you don't worry about drinking and womanizing, I'm going to give you your reward through a god later on when you are dead. And if you fight for the whole thing, you're going to be rewarded even higher. And if you die as a martyr, this is going to be maximum. So it was the usage of the god concept. As
But what made you
that
think this
people
is
were using.
Muawiyah that started this? I have some issues with the Muawiyah thing.
If you look at, okay, he was the first one who had to cope with an uprising in Egypt. And he sent his cousin there who failed miserably. And then someone else was sent there, and I can't remember who, I forgot his name. I don't think it was Amr. It was somebody else. And he used religion the way that the Egyptians did it. In other words, he used the whole routine of the Nile. He used the whole sequence that the Egyptians had developed around the Nile and the god figure that they had who was looking after them, who was living in the godly house in the big palace. And this is where the whole thing comes together, where you start going into the god figure of the pharaohs, who later became just kings, which was revived by the guy when he realized he could use religion to his benefit.
This is what I mean. I mean, it's an important part of the imperial building. Like,
I
would agree with you, but I don't think
Muawiyah was the first one, though.
Okay, thank you very much. Bye, see you next time.
Thank you, Abul Mohid. You just started something that I don't think will not end anytime soon.
Now, the thing is, this is my personal interpretation, okay? This is not something that you will find in the literature, that you will find
I agree with you almost to the T, except the fact that it was Muawiyah who started this, because it wasn't...
No.
Like I was saying, there were so many other rebellions.
No. Abdul Malik started it. Muawiyah was the first one who experimented with it, but he didn't use it yet.
Well, I would even say that this started with Abu Bakr more than anyone.
Yeah, but hang on. I'm talking like 100 years later.
I know, but I'm saying that this is actually from... Like, I'm actually going back towards the original story. I don't know if Muhammad... Like... Okay, you're pretty much saying that Muhammad either didn't exist...
No. I'm saying that the Muhammad as described in the Sunnah didn't exist.
Of course, I don't believe the Sunnah.
The Muhammad who lived in Mecca, who was born by Amina and Abdullah, this story is fabricated.
But do you believe that he was some guy who started a cult or something, and then
yes,
the cult...
I believe that Muhammad was a warlord, somebody who started the expansion. He was somebody who had he was a charismatic leader, right? He was somebody who got the people together, who united the Arabs and made them fight for him to go and plunder caravans and settlements and things like that. And this then developed later on into Islam. But he was not...
I accept this.
It was not the guy that you in the Sunnah and that he with the Quraysh and with all the stories in Medina and all that. That's all fabricated. They just needed a figurehead later, so they took Muhammad. Just the same with Jesus. I mean, Jesus didn't exist. He was fabricated 100 years later because they needed somebody.
But that's why I think Abu Bakr was the main guy, because Abu Bakr knew that Muhammad wasn't really that.
And this is how you tie the whole thing together. This is how every figure in Islam has its own role. Now, Muhammad was the guy who took everybody and said, okay, we are going to expand Islam, and I am a human, and I can go through all these rituals, and I am doing this for the heavenly divine reward later on. And if I, Muhammad, can do this, everybody else can do it. Now, if you notice, Abu Bakr, Umar, and all those people, they are not mentioning this. They are not. They say they commented on Muhammad when he was praying, and they just joined in. But they were not the preacher figures. They were not the leaders like Muhammad was. With them, their role was completely different. Their role was to establish the caliphate, which Muhammad did not do. He suggested it. He said the spiritual way of doing it is via the caliphate. But he never did anything like it. And then it was only Abu Bakr and Umar which actually went and established it.
That I totally agree with that. I think that this is exactly pretty much what went down. Muhammad didn't make, he mentioned it, wouldn't that be great? But then they took it on, and then they created what we know now as Islam, but used him as some guy that they can, whenever they said, oh, Muhammad wants this, is what they wanted. So they just say, hey, Muhammad wanted this. Do you know what I'm saying?
Exactly. So, and this is why different pieces get tacked on at different times. This is why the Quran has different sections which contradict each other. And you have all the different styles. I mean, the second chapter must have been a separate book or something. So the first chapter doesn't make any sense in the context there. So this is why different pieces get put together, and this is then the Quran. And then they realize, oh shit, we forgot about this, so we need to add something. So they took the Hadith, and then they needed now somebody to live the whole concept that they had brought up to expand the whole Arab thing. Then they came in with Muhammad, and then they added all the rest in.
This is classical revolutionary movements. They have a leader, they have a charismatic leader. The charismatic leader gets everyone around, but there's also a lot of people in the background who are mainly behind the push. And when the leader dies, everyone uses the words of the dead leader to push their... I mean, look at what communism did.
Look at what, North Korea, same principle.
Exactly. So...
And look at Ayatollah Khomeini. They still use the little green book.
Exactly, yes. I didn't want to use that example, but exactly.
I'm sorry.
That's the one I was trying to get around, but yeah. Now that we're on it, but that's exactly what it is. Khomeini came and he had all these ideas about, let's have a revolution. This is what an Islamic republic is going to look like. And then now you have people who completely... they have killed off lots of the people who used to be the pushers of the revolution. Classical revolutionary style, killing off your own, right? And then now they use the word, hey, Khomeini wants this, Khomeini wants that. Even though maybe Khomeini didn't want any of this, but now they have the claim on what Khomeini wanted because they're in power. So when Abu Bakr was in power, whatever they wanted to say is what Muhammad said. And this is why I think Abu Bakr is really important, because Abu Bakr's daughter is Aisha. So he's got double legitimacy. Anything that he says, Aisha can say, yeah, even in bed, he said. There's lots of examples of this where Aisha supported her political views against Ali based on what she said Muhammad wanted in bed. Not like in bed, but in private quarters.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, again, if anybody wants to join in, come on, and you can join us on the live show, which is every Sunday, 1800 UTC. So go to the Gin and Tonic Show on YouTube. There's a link there where you can find out your local time, wherever you may be. It will show you what time the show will start. If you want to join in, we have 1 hour of different topics that we're going to cover, and then 1 hour open-ended, well, not open-ended, just discussion, free discussion. If you want to make suggestions, if you have questions, if you want to criticize, if you want to say something, just come on in, go to the live link, and then in the comments, I'll put a link there. You just click on the link, and you're going to come into the show where you can discuss or talk or whatever you want to do. If you do, please ask or comment or do, and then leave again, and then we're going to want to talk about this. If you want to come back later, no problem, please do so. Okay, today we're looking at the expansion, the Islamic expansion. We're talking about imperialism. We're talking about, well, actually it's colonization, all right? Because I always hear this from Muslims who are saying, yeah, the USA are colonizing, the UK was always colonizing, the Spanish were colonizing, the Portuguese were colonizing. They forget that the Arabs were colonizing. I mean, it's not that Spain just voluntarily came and said, we want to join the Arab Peninsula. It's not that Azerbaijan suddenly said, listen, we want to join the Arab Peninsula. They were conquered with a lot of deaths and a lot of misery.
Lots of blood.
Lots of
Just
blood.
like every other army that attacked. I mean, this was definitely not a peaceful invasion. The choices that they offered is much like the Mongols. You know, the Mongols also offered, if you don't fight, we'll let you go do whatever you want. You run your own city, but if you do fight, you're all going to die. And that, you know, that's exactly what the Mongols did. So
in Islam, you always had the choice. You either join us, you die, you pay, or you leave.
It's kind of like the choice of, you know, in lots of countries, you have the freedom of speech. You just don't have freedom after speech. And it's here. It's like you have a freedom to choose if you want to die now or if you want to. You know, it's like this is
called extortion, the mafia style. Timaeus, what have you got for us? Thank you for joining us. Do you have a question? Do you have a suggestion, or do you just want to make a comment? Timaeus, you need to unmute your mic because I can see that it is still muted.
Yes. Or eternal. Maybe Timaeus is not at his keyboard right now. Eternal, can you hear us? Do you want to say something? Or not?
Okay, maybe these are just people who thought they will just click on this so that they can listen in or be part of it or whatever.
Okay, that's
because
fine.
Not everybody understands that if you click on you do not need to click on the link if you just want to hang out here and listen to see what we're doing, what we're saying, whether you agree or not. The link is there if you want to participate, if you want to actively come in and talk and suggest and question and criticize or whatever. That is what you do with the link. If you don't want to do that, you're welcome to just hang out and just listen to what others are saying and maybe understand a little bit of what is going on in Islam today, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to link the history of Islam with what is going on today so that people have a better understanding of what Islam is all about. Now, one thing that we haven't looked at all, why do you think Islam is a political entity rather than only a religious, spiritual attainment for salvation?
Give me a hard one, man.
Sorry. You haven't got a ready answer for that?
Are you asking me right now? Well, I
Yes.
will answer. I thought you... Well, because it was based on a political structure and power structure and empire when it started, as we talked about earlier. The whole thing came out of a political structure, so of course it's going to have politics in it.
Okay, and how do you see this acting out today?
Well, that's exactly the controversy, isn't it? Where we have some people say that they don't think that religion has anything to do with how you act right now, which I think is completely incorrect. I mean, when Islam says, for example, Sharia gives you laws about how to spread your inheritance, gives you laws about how you can divorce people, gives you laws about what happens when you steal. This is taking the role of a government away. You don't need a government when you have the Quran. And so when you have people who look at the Quran as equal in what laws, these laws are equal, just as important as the laws that maybe a legitimate government puts, then of course we're going to have bad citizens. And that's why I think that maybe if you really are a very, very hard practicing Muslim in the way that you think Sharia should be implemented everywhere, that's the right thing, that maybe has some issues with being a citizen in some countries. If you don't think it's okay for you to follow, let's just say, secular laws of the hosting country. Does that make sense?
But then you're cherry picking, okay? And just to answer a question, because Unwashed Masses just asked, how do you comment so they can read it live right now? Yes, we are reading the comments right now, live right now. And if you want to come in here, just click on the link and you can come and talk to us. Alasa, No, there's no evidence. Hadiths are all around Muhammad. Hadiths are made for, by, including, or whatever you want to call them, a person they call Muhammad, who, as chance will have it, is also a title. Now, everybody knows that Muhammad also means the praised one. So if you read the Quran, for example, where Muhammad only features 4 times by name, all right? Otherwise, he's not mentioned there. If you look at that, it can also be read as a title, not necessarily as a person. If you go to the Hadith, then yes, they are all based on Muhammad. But who says that this is not, a fictitious character?
I mean, they're based on Muhammad, but they're made obviously how many years after? So of course they're. If we were to assume anything otherwise, we would just be tricking ourselves very visibly, right?
Exactly. And look, Jesus. I mean, the whole of Christianity is based on Jesus, but Jesus didn't really exist, so that doesn't work. So we need to look at the evidence, all right? I'm busy making a video. Well, I'm busy making 5 videos. The thing is that I'm always jumping and I'm always getting information, and I actually want to carry on with my reading of the Quran. So I'm a little bit torn, but I spend so little time on this. It's actually a shame. I was more interested when I was refuting these LDM videos because they were quick and easy to do. But if you want to go into Muhammad and do it properly, there's a lot of information that you've got to go through. And this is what makes it very difficult, and I can't spend 2 hours like really in a like a scholarly way. I can't do that. So I just need to go and make it a short video. So we've got Al-Assad. The Hadiths are not from Muhammad. They are based on Muhammad. If you want to believe that Muslims, or like Muslims do, that Muhammad actually existed, that's fine. I mean, Christians believe that Jesus actually existed. That's fine. I mean, I can't stop you from doing that, but there's no evidence to do that.
I can see where you're coming from with the Jesus kind of being historically hazy. But I would say there's more historical evidence to the presence of Muhammad.
That's what I thought. No, there's less.
You'd say there's less than Jesus?
Less. Yeah, because at least with Jesus you have Josephus and Tacitus and you have Africanus and you have a couple of people. With Muhammad you have nothing.
Well, maybe this is
you have people like 1,000 kilometers away, 100 years later, and things like that. Otherwise, there's absolutely nothing. I mean, I've been having this discussion with Kling many times.
See, I don't know that much about the back of.
Yeah, because you also came up with this Doctrina Jacobi and Eusebius and all these people. But once you start looking into them, you find there's no substance there. It's nothing. Somebody mentions the Saracen or the prophet of the Saracens. What does that mean? Why does that mean Muhammad? Especially when it was written.
Like we said, he could have been the head of a starting thing, but then they completely put him aside and did whatever they wanted after.
You see, and this is the point. But then you're starting to contradict the hadiths, and you're starting to contradict everything else in the Sunnah.
I don't have any problem contradicting hadiths.
632. Either he died 632 or not. So
I don't have any problem contradicting hadith. That's you have to in order to.
Okay, Fee Crux. I've just finished Tom Holland's Shadow of the Sword book, and the book he completely disregards the process of isnads and calls them totally. Absolutely, it's totally. There's nothing there. I mean, I can. They have shown isnads which were fabricated. Can you please respond to this as according to Muslims, isnad is fabricated? No. I mean, what is an isnad? It is just a whole list of names. Do we have any kind of historic evidence for the names? No. Do we have any kind of dates associated with those names that we can verify? No. So all it is just a list of names where my hairdresser told my wife something, and then she told this to something. I mean, it's ridiculous. The isnad is totally fabricated. There's nothing that is reliable. There's nothing. I know Muslims love to call it the science of it. No, there's nothing scientific there. Absolutely not. So I totally disregard hadiths. That's why I argue 99% from the Quran, and only to accommodate Muslims, I sometimes go into the hadith and see if they confirm this. Okay, Eternal, you have found a microphone somewhere in a drawer.
Yeah, hey, what's going on, guys?
Hey, welcome. What have you got for us?
I just got in 5 minutes ago. What were you guys talking about? What was the topic?
You want the topic? Well, we're talking about Islam, and we're talking about the historical development of Islam. We're talking about the colonization, and we're talking about the expansion of Islam during the first 100 years.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just wanted to touch on. Arab imperialism and colonialism in regards to Islam.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. We've got the expert here, who is Arash. He knows everything about this.
Because as I'm a non-Arab.
Not really, but
and now I'm not a Muslim anymore, but I'm still in the closet. But I just
congratulations, my friend. Congratulations.
I just wanted to see, like, the Arabs, they're very hypocritical when it comes to these things, because they conveniently forget their history of imperialism and colonialism, right? And how many cultures and languages they destroyed. So I just wanted to touch on that.
That's kind of what Abu Mulhid was saying about how we can't blame imperialism of the West for everything, yet we forget the imperialism of the Arabs at one point.
Yeah, and the slave trade they conducted as well, right?
I mean, they always like to say slavery. The West had slavery. Well, Islam had slavery.
Yeah.
They always like to point America, the white horse. You guys had slaves 200 years ago. Okay, you guys had slaves.
And the thing is, the slaves in America, they're still there, but the slaves in the Arab world, they're like diminished. The population is diminished.
Exactly, they still have slaves. They're known as the South Asian migrant workers. Anyway, but I have a question here on. Did you want to have more on this?
No, go ahead.
No, I'm fine.
I had a question here that Timaeus, I guess, can't talk, but he wrote his question. He's saying that I wanted to know how the development of Shiism was affected by Sasanian cultures and religions at the time.
Oh, shit. Now he got you started.
Yes. But I would say that maybe I can get into this in the other show next time, more of the cultural aspect. But I wouldn't say that Sasanian religion or culture affected Shiism directly, because there was no Shiism exactly at that point. But I would say that the Shiism that came out in the East, in Baghdad, after the Abbasid period, we're not talking about the original followers of Ali. We're talking about after the Shias kind of shifted away from the Arab world and migrated into the Iranian plateau. Then you can see some aspects of, then I would say, Iranian culture, not really Sasanian, though you could connect that, coming into Shiism. Things like Nasser Khosrow, for example, which is a Iranian thinker which has very Eastern views about philosophy, and then he becomes this huge influence on Ismaili Shia thinking. And so if that answers your question, I wouldn't say, because lots of people think that Shiism came from the Sasanians as a way to hit back against the Arabs, but that's kind of a misconception, because when that started out, Shiism became a dominant Iranian religion during the Safavid times. So, we can't really connect exactly Sasanians to Shiism, if that answers. But you can connect, like I said, some.
They had overlapping areas.
But the thing is, the time span when Shiism comes out to be Shiism, the Sasanian Empire has been toppled for hundreds of years now, but the Iranian thing has still stayed. Like, we have
Persian.
Well, not really Persian. You can't really use the word Persian, because that's the Western way of looking at it. The Sasanians themselves looked at this land as Iran Shah. Iran means land of.
Now I understand it. All right.
Yeah. So the Iran is kind of the Iranian plateau. When they say Iran, they're talking about Afghanistan. They're talking about Tajikistan. They're talking about some of the Caucasus and parts of Iraq right now. So we're not talking about Iran right now. We're talking about the original idea of Iran, which the Sasanians thought.
And that's what I usually call Persia, exactly for disambiguation
purposes. Yeah, and that's what
purposes.
The West calls Persia. Yes, that is what we say Persia, and that also pisses off a lot of Iranians who don't see themselves as Persians per se. They might be Kurds or something else, or Baluch, and
Yeah,
they'll
but
be like,
they're
hey,
descendants of the old Persian, of the ancient Persians.
well, Persians came from the Fars province.
Okay, it's fine. Yeah, fine.
But yeah, any other questions?
Yeah, there's. Okay, Eternal. Do you want to ask another question, or do you have still something?
I just wanted to suggest that you guys should do a show on Ahmadiyya, because I am a former Ahmadi myself.
Now,
And,
that would be incredibly interesting, because I'm looking for an Ahmadiyya to explain exactly what it is. Would you be
I'm not an
willing
expert, though, but I can show you. I can give you some insight since I am still in the closet.
But now we are at the end of the show, unfortunately, and I don't want to overrun too much because then other shows are starting and I don't want to cannibalize. Do you think that we can book you for half an hour, like next week or the week after that?
Yeah, sure, no problem. I'm a regular viewer, so I'll be there.
That would be brilliant. Can you send me a Skype request so that I have your address, and I'll send you the link next week. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a Thursday trailer again, announcing that it's going to be an 1800 show because of the new time slot. I didn't even check today whether people were there for the morning where we used to be. And then I will introduce you as somebody who will give us some insight into the Ahmadiyya, because I must admit I have very, very little knowledge, and that would be brilliant if we could have somebody who gives us some input on this. Is that possible?
Sure, no problem. I'll be there.
Send me to Stopspamming 1. Send me a Skype request, and then we'll put you on. Then we'll do this. And do you have time next week? This time?
Oh yeah, I do.
Oh, that would be brilliant. Thank you very, very much. That would be super.
No problem.
Okay, then we'll see you next week for this one. Timaeus, is your? Oh, but hang on. Can you speak now? Do you have a microphone? No, still not. So have we answered the question, or do you want something else from Arash?
No, that's all.
I heard something.
Hello?
Yes?
Oh, can you hear me now?
Very, very softly. If you speak up, yes.
Hello. I just wanted to know, like how different regional cultures and religions influence the development of Sufism, actually.
No, I can't understand. Did you hear something, Arash?
What the influence? What?
Influence of regional cultures on Sufism.
On Sufism. That's interesting. Okay. Well, actually, if you were here, if you listened to our show about the Ismaili Shiism, we touched a little bit on that, but I can research some of that and bring back. There is lots of that. There's lots of Buddhism and Eastern and even your like Roman style influences on Sufi orders. But you have to remember that the original Sufis weren't as the Sufis we know them now. They used to be more fundamental. So the original Sufis were the ones that killed Ali because he wasn't warrior enough. So we have to distinguish kind of between what we think of Sufism now and what Sufism used to be.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks for your question, and then cheerio, and we'll see you next week. I have one last one before we end the show, because Unwashed Masses has asked whether we can do something on the scientific miracle claims. Now, the thing is, we've all done, I think, hundreds of videos on all these different miracle claims in different videos. If you have a specific one that you want to know something about, or you want to address something, then you can always raise it. But now, to go through all 125 is a bit much. So, science and the Quran, no. If you want one addressed specifically, then you'll just have to suggest it. Otherwise, no.
I will cover science in Islam our next show, but that's way different from science and Quran.
Oh, good. We're going to fight. Excellent.
I don't think we are.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool. All right, guys. Thank you very much, Arash. Thank you very much. You chat and 2 hours are gone, poof, just like that. So
Good show. See you guys all next
There
week.
is one. No. Hang on. There is still one thing because Alasa did the Hadith of the week last time, so it's my turn this week.
Sorry, Alasa. I'm sorry. Forgive me.
And it was narrated from, and this is Hudayfa, from Hudayfa this time. This is also, yes, this is about Muhammad, whether he existed or not. A lot of people talked about him. And this guy, Hudayfa, says that Muhammad came to the garbage dump of some people and he urinated on it, standing up. And that is the Hadith of the week.
And what do we take from this Hadith?
And this is from Sunnah.com, all right? So this is not something that is fabricated
You didn't make
or something.
this up,
I did not make this up. This is an authentic Hadith. Muhammad came to the garbage dump of some people and urinated on it standing up. I don't know what this.
I don't even know what that means. Does he not like the garbage? Does he purify it? Is he is he washing it and getting it ready for prayer? What's going on?
This is
anyway, good show.
This is amazing. Thank you very much for all your work and all your notes and everything. I think you did a really
Thanks everyone for watching.
Job keeping it together, bringing everything there with this very nicely presented. So we'll see you next week, 6 o'clock, where Arash will continue on imperialism. And we just
1
heard
o'clock Eastern.
6 o'clock, 1 o'clock Eastern, PM.
1 o'clock Eastern in PM in America.
And Eternal Apostate, and I'm very excited about this. If this will really work, this will be really brilliant.
Yeah, I don't know anything about those.
Apostate is going to bring us some influence and some insights on how the Ahmadiyya works, and this will be brilliant. Okay, cool guys. Thank you very much. See you next week. Take care and take it easy. Ciao for now.